D.I. Sat Nav. Written by Melissa Bubnick. Read by Christopher Lloyd.
Sat Nav thought of himself as a great detective. In the mold of Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe, Don Johnson. You know the type, grizzled and cynical with a fondness for whiskey, loose dames, and powerful firearms. Well, that's how Nassim liked to see himself. The truth was, he wasn't a great detective. Not at all. Some men are born great, and others attach themselves to great men like a parasitic tapeworm gorging on a host's intestinal tract. And that was the relationship Nassim had with his partner, Detective Inspector Troy McAdams. You see, it was Troy who was the great detective. He solved cases, and Nassim basked in Troy's reflected glory, mistakenly thinking he too had contributed to their success. He hadn't. Still, Nabby and McAdams were a classic cop duo. They ate kebabs during stakeouts, engaged in totally unrealistic car chases that were a threat to public safety, and exchanged thinly veiled homoerotic banter. Troy and Nassim were investigating the case of their careers, desperate to bring down Sonny Bombini and his criminal empire that held the city to ransom. Racketeering, drugs, prostitution, and trading in knockoff designer handbags. The Bambinis were notoriously elusive. Whenever Troy and Nassim were close to busting them, Sonny and his posse always managed to give them the slip. One night, while trailing a couple of Bambini family hoods, Troy called Nassim for backup, even though, as we've established, Nassim was as useful as a chocolate catheter. Naz, I'm under fire. I need you here, fast, real fast. Faster than a 17-year-old gets chlamydia in a Ibiza hostel. Troy shouted into his radio as he dodged bullets. I'm coming, Troy, coming like a Nassim struggled to think of a rejoinder that was in equal parts witty and smutty. His appalling sense of geography meant he got lost backing out of the driveway. Tragically, Troy was gunned down before Nassim had even managed to get out of his cul-de-sac. By the time Nassim got there, Troy was dead. No! Nassim shouted in slow motion. Feeling guilty about letting his partner down was bad enough. It was even worse that everyone at the station blamed him as well, and he was bumped to the traffic unit. It's not that issuing speeding tickets isn't important, it just lacks a certain film noir panache. Like you can't imagine a film such as Chinatown being made about a one-man crusade for justice against parking violations. Miserable about his fall from grace, Nassim would have spent the rest of his days removing orange cones from the heads of statues, were it not for the fact that he was issued a repurposed Sat Nav. Nothing unusual about that, you may be thinking. A traffic cop needs a Sat Nav. The fact that it didn't work and that it repeatedly directed Nassim to the wrong places, well, that's police budget cuts for you. Nassim was naturally indignant. He didn't need a Sat Nav to get him lost. It was one of the few things he was capable of achieving all on his own. But then, one day, the Sat Nav directed him not to a traffic incident, but to an abandoned canal-side warehouse, where he stumbled across some bullet casings. The casings were a perfect match for the bullets used to murder Betsy Caliente. Hell of a dame. Had a wit so dry you could stick in an olive and call her a martini. Before she became a corpse, Betsy had been Sonny Bambini's mistress, and it was her murder that Troy was investigating the night he died. But why would a Sat Nav lead him to these bullet casings? His curiosity piqued, Nassim revisited the so-called wrong places the Sat Nav had directed him to previously. The speakeasy, car wash, and pet grooming salon, all of which were registered in the name of, you guessed it, Sonny Bambini. Something about this just doesn't add up, like a hooker preaching abstinence or a woman president, Nassim said to himself as he stared at the Sat Nav. It looked perfectly ordinary, but then ordinary Sat Navs don't lead you to crime scenes, especially crime scenes implicating the very criminal boss you and your dead partner were trying to bring down. Could it be possible that the spirit of D.I. Troy McAdams had possessed the Sat Nav and was enabling Nassim to continue his life's work from beyond the grave? Nassim laughed off the idea almost as soon as he thought of it. Such a notion was ludicrous, preposterous. And yet, there was no denying that there was something very fishy about this Sat Nav. Troy? Nassim asked the Sat Nav. But the Sat Nav did not respond, because it was a Sat Nav, not an advanced artificial intelligence humanoid. Who do you think is bankrolling this series? Steven Spielberg? If the Sat Nav couldn't talk to Nassim, they would have to find another way to communicate. If you're Troy, take me to Troy's favorite caf on the double and make it snappy, Nassim said to the Sat Nav. Imagine Nassim's delight when, after turning left, then right, and then continuing on the road for 1.3 kilometers, the Sat Nav finally said,
"You have now reached your destination."
And Nassim found himself at Brown and Hot, Troy's favorite caf that served coffee the way Troy loved it. Brown and Hot, classic Troy. Nassim erupted into joy at being reunited with his best pal. So joyous, in fact, that he kissed the Sat Nav. Then he felt weird for kissing the Sat Nav. To cover this potentially awkward situation, Nassim and Sat Nav reminisced about old times. Remember when we beat a murder confession out of that junkie, Charlie Drake? And he was so terrified he wet himself. And then we found out he couldn't have done it because he was already in custody for lifting some broad's purse. Good times.
At the roundabout, take the second exit.
Agreed, Sat Nav. Nassim's life was transformed. His superiors were impressed by the new breaks in the Bambini case and promised to promote him back to detective inspector if he managed to secure a conviction. So Nassim marked the bills of $20,000 in cash with a cock and balls in the corner of each note. Because, yes, he was that juvenile. The marked bills were spent at a strip club he knew the Bambinis were using as a front for their more nefarious operations. It was grueling work, objectifying naked women, but he was determined to find the marked bills and secure a conviction. Nassim was so close to being respected as a great detective, and it was all because of Sat Nav. Staking out the strip club, Nassim clocked a couple of Bambini goons making away with their regular collection of cash. He tracked them down a dark alleyway. He crept up to their car and spotted the bag of cash. This was it. This was his moment, the moment he busted the Bambinis, restored his reputation, and established himself as a great detective on his own terms. He almost cried when he overheard the goons' conversation. "What do you mean we should take McAdams' usual cut?" the first goon asked the second goon. "Well, he don't need it no more. Ever since Sonny decided to have him bumped off," responded the second goon, revealing an implausible amount of crucial exposition. Nassim felt like he'd just been punched in the guts. He couldn't breathe. What did they just say? What could they mean by McAdams' usual cut? Nassim lifted the leather bag filled with bills marked with a tiny cock and balls. He took a good look at it. Nassim stopped cold. He knew that leather bag. He'd seen it before. It was Troy McAdams' bag. Nassim now understood that Troy, the Sat Nav, knew its way around Bambini family operations because Troy had been on their payroll from the beginning. Troy was keen to bust the Bambinis because he wanted revenge. Nassim finally had the Bambinis red-handed, found with incriminating evidence. But he couldn't bring the Bambinis down without implicating his partner as a crooked cop. Bummer! As Nassim walked back to his car, he faced a heartbreaking dilemma. Expose McAdams as a fraud and betray the friend to whom he owed everything, or become McAdams' accomplice by concealing his secret. Nassim concealed the bag of cash in the boot and kept the conversation light in front of Sat Nav. He didn't want Sat Nav suspecting that he knew Sat Nav was bent and was about to spill the beans. Exactly how much did Sat Nav understand? When he explained that there was a change of plans and he wouldn't keep following the goons. Let's head back to the police station, because there's a cake for Mariah's birthday, and I know she's an old cow no one likes, but I put in some dough for the cake, and it'd be a waste if I don't eat any. Did Sat Nav believe his cover story? Was it looking at him funny? And if Sat Nav could see where exactly were his eyes? What if Sat Nav was telepathic? If it could anticipate traffic, why not the workings of Nassim's mind? Sure, that sounded stupid, but no more stupid than a possessed Sat Nav in the first place. Nassim would have loved to throw the bloody Sat Nav out the window, but he couldn't for the life of him remember how to get back to the police station.
At the next junction, turn right. Turn right,
said Sat Nav. I won't be lectured on what's right from you. Of course. Yes, of course. Turn right, of course, said Nassim, desperately trying to keep his frayed nerves in check.
In 520 meters, turn left. Turn left,
responded Sat Nav. Left! Why you left me? No choice, screamed Nassim accusingly.
You have now reached your destination.
At first, Nassim was puzzled because he wasn't at the police station, but at the back of a suspiciously dark warehouse where a dead body could go undetected for days. Troy, this isn't Mariah's party. At the same time, her sonny Bambini, flanked by henchmen, pointed their guns at him. Only a traitor pull away from directing Nassim to an altogether more final destination. That's when Nassim understood Sat Nav had directed him exactly where it intended for him to go. Nassim was convinced he was a goner, and was momentarily pleased at the thought of there maybe being a film version of his life's battle against corruption in the force. And disappointed because there were no Hollywood Asian stars big enough to open a blockbuster, which meant he'd probably be played by Colin Farrell. He was a right twat. And then the siren sounded. It was a police raid. The cops knew the Bambinis had an insider in the force, and Nassim was gobsmacked when the Bambinis, in exchange for a plea bargain, named him as their accomplice. How else could Nassim explain why he had a bag full of marked Bambini cash? It's the Sat Nav, he screamed as he was dragged away in cuffs. It's possessed by Troy McAdams. He took bribes, not me. He's as crooked as a question mark. But obviously no one believed him because stories about possessed Sat Navs are simply crazy. And not crazy amusing, like a T-shirt that says honk if you're horny, but crazy psychotic. Like the radio told me I was Jesus, and that's why I put custard down my pants. Nassim was sentenced to 13 years of prison. The moral of this story? Never trust a Sat Nav. They always lead you astray.